Guest list heavy, big names abound. Academic and professional leaders, knowledge profound. Gary May, Robert Langer, Golden Sound. Podcast lit, wisdom's playground. Conversations rich, interviews bright. From MDs to artists, sharing insight. Chemistry vibe, conversations ignite. STEAM dreams growing, future so bright. Chancellor May, Sidney Colley in the fold. M.K. Brown, Sheena Colley, stories told. Mike Zott, Robert Langer, wisdom gold. McCall Washington, young minds bold. Dr. Thomas N.G., Todd Golub, ignite. Abinaya Marcella, vision bright. Lesel Vincent, Sonola's insight. Michael Evans, cough under spotlight. Sarah Scrabalak, Nigella speak clear. Jake Desmond's vision future near. Mr. Bourne Kuna, Fortingo here. Darissa Ferguson, voices sincere. Guest list heavy, big names abound. Academic and professional leaders, knowledge profound. Gary May, Robert Langer, Golden Sound. Podcast lit, wisdom's playground. Conversations rich, interviews bright. From MDs to artists, sharing insight. Chemistry vibe, conversations ignite. STEAM dreams growing, future so bright. L.C. Campo, Emory Brown's precision. Lynn Rashay Johnson brings thoughtful vision. Keshav Gavin transclinical mission. Dick Mann and Johansson research ambition. Louis Junheim, Trevor Johnson's art. And Pinder speaking from the heart. David Joshua Ferguson plays his part. Chadwin Hanna, Vincent Miranda start. Greg Zuckerman writing from the Wall Street beat. Cordell Hardy's wisdom research elite. Kyle Woom, Forbes list ambition complete. Gabriel Galarza's insights repeat. Guest list heavy, big names abound. Academic and professional leaders, knowledge profound. Gary May, Robert Langer, Golden Sound. Podcast lit, wisdom's playground. Conversations rich, interviews bright. From MDs to artists, sharing insight. Chemistry vibe, conversations ignite. STEAM dreams growing, future so bright. Dev Mandavia, corporate strategy bold. Jenai Burrows, medical stories unfold. Doreen Duncan's vision, Island City mold. Paul Boyer's lectures, stories retold. Omar Sharif Ali, software meta. Economic talks, making minds better. Pranav Dorbala, med school go-getter. Ging Rahim Bia, engineering trendsetter. Savni Kulkarni, Abbott structural heart. PharmD candidate giving advice to start. Podcast guest list, masterful art. New chemist podcast playing art part. Guest list heavy, names renowned. Knowledge deep, esteem, vibes profound. Podcast flowing, innovation sound. Future so bright, keep dreams unbound.
Purpose of these episodes not at all for advice or medical suggestions. These are aimed to provide support to peer pharmacists in training in educational and intellectually stimulating ways. Again, these are not at all for medical advice or medical suggestions. Please see your local board and state-certified health professional. The views of this podcast represent those of my guests and I.
Yep, so welcome to the Blueprint. Today we have with us a very special guest. His name is Oye Owolewa. United States Representative Oye Owolewa is a dedicated public servant and a community advocate committed to uplifting the voices of underserved communities. Elected in 2020 as the United States Representative for the District of Columbia, Representative Owolewa made history as the first Nigerian American elected to Congress. His leadership is rooted in a passion for equity, social justice, and empowering marginalized populations. Born to Nigerian immigrant parents, Representative Owolewa grew up in Massachusetts before moving to Washington, D.C., where he earned his doctorate in pharmacy from Northeastern University. Background in healthcare has fueled his advocacy for accessible and affordable healthcare, mental health resources, and economic empowerment. Prior to his role in Congress, Representative Owolewa actively served his community through various grassroots initiatives. He worked closely with local organizations to provide educational support, mentorship, and resources for D.C. residents. His focus on youth engagement and civic education has inspired young leaders to become active participants in their communities. In Congress, Representative Owolewa continues to champion policies that promote racial and economic equity, expand mental health support, and address systemic injustices. He is a strong advocate for D.C. statehood, ensuring that the residents of the nation's capital have full representation in Congress. His legislative priorities include economic development, healthcare awareness, and youth empowerment, aiming to create opportunities and resources for all D.C. residents. With a steadfast commitment to service, Representative Owolewa remains dedicated to improving the lives of his constituents and building a more inclusive and just society for all. So Oye, it's great to have you with me today.
Great to be here.
Yeah, man, it's good to have you. So
Thanks.
Tonight's guest approaches policy basically with the same clinical with a high degree of precision. As a pharmacist, he knows that the wrong dose can be poison. As a shadow representative, he fights for the vessel of statehood. Now he asks how he plans to make solutions for the city council. We need policies that protect potential and run conditions tight. So, Oye, you've partnered with local organizations to provide educational support. What would you say are some of your key initiatives that you plan to implement when you run for city council?
Absolutely. First of all, I want to thank you for having me on the Blueprint. You know, it's been a lot of work you put in our calendars to align, and I really appreciate the opportunity to not only talk about my platform, but really talk about being a healthcare worker, be in politics. Not a lot of us are in this space. To answer your question directly, some of the few things that I really wanted to do as I pursue this race for city council is, number one, make UDC, our public university, tuition free for DC residents. Whether it's using our healthcare experience to stabilize, DC's healthcare system, where right now we're facing huge Medicaid cuts, and nationally we're going to see huge Medicare cuts. And last but not least, bring international development NGO careers to DC, where we're seeing so much of the Doge cuts and so many federal workers being laid off, just really bringing in that new economy and making DC better, but using a scientific approach and mindset to drive positive outcomes.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah. So you've partnered with organizations like Reset to bring science directly into elementary classrooms. How can the City Council best support these hands-on initiatives to ensure students in every ward, not just the well-to-do ones, catch the innovation bug early?
Yeah, exactly. My very first foray in public service, 12 years ago, before I even thought about running for office, was getting involved in kids becoming interested in science careers. Me being Nigerian American, it seemed as if we could only have four choices. You get a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, and if all else fails, become a pharmacist like me.
Okay, well.
Moving to DC, I met so many kids that looked like me or come from backgrounds that I came from, but didn't have that same push. So I found an organization, it's called Reset, that basically allowed me to get into classrooms to do that very thing. Since the pandemic, the organization went on a little bit of a death spiral from lack of funding and went out of business. So if I were to become a council member, not only do we get to legislate, like pass laws or have oversight over government agencies, but we also have power over the budget. And what I would do is find organizations like Reset or resurrect Reset, for lack of a better word, by providing the key funding that would be needed to carry out these initiatives. We all want science enrichment. We all want kids to have their math scores go up. But very, 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 very infrequently do we actually have scientists getting into these classrooms, talking to kids about what they can be. And I do believe that will make a big difference in our communities. And I do believe that will make a big difference in the trajectory of these young people by instilling them the expectation and the inspiration of becoming scientists.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's one thing, the idea of representation is so important, because when you're able to see someone in the field you're aspiring to, that has a definite effect on your ability to think about it, strategize, problem solve, and you have a real life example of someone who's achieved that goal that you are working toward.
Absolutely.
Yep. So DC is becoming a hub for tech and biotech, yet many long-term residents feel locked out of these economies. What specific policies would you introduce to build a direct pipeline from DC public schools to these high-growth careers?
Well, it kind of comes with the general ideas of what we're trying to do. Now, if you look at my life, whether it's going from a young kid to becoming a scientist to becoming a politician, what have you, it came with a lot of privileges and opportunities that we took advantage of. Me being in office, what I want to do is extend those privileges and extend those opportunities for young people in the city. So we're talking about getting kids as young as 3, 4th, 5th grade interested in science careers. What we're doing is putting them into the pipeline of these very careers that we're trying to bring to DC. When we're talking about making UDC tuition free, what we're doing is equipping young people with the skills without burdening them with the debt. I mean, how many pharmacy students, how many college grads are graduating with $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 in debt? And when we're leaving young people from that debt, we're giving them the chance to create their own businesses, become entrepreneurs, think outside the box, and not be so worried about making it for tomorrow. And when we get these young people into these specialized careers, especially if they're native Washingtonians, we can actually have them impact their parents and their grandparents' lives to the point that maybe they won't be so reliant on a government that's continuing to fail them. Maybe they'll have a nephew or a grandchild that's making enough money to keep that family's economy stabilized. So it's not just one thing we can do, but all of those things that I'm really pushing forward will really help rebuild DC's middle class and make sure that folks who made DC what it is can afford to stay in the DC of tomorrow.
Yes, I agree. That's very important. So we often see brilliant students leave the district for opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah.
How can we use local policies to incentivize STEM graduates from universities like Howard to stay and build their careers right here in DC?
We have to bring the careers. I mean, let's face it, the number one employer in DC is the local government and the federal government. And before this year, everybody thought that was the most stable career ever. Don't worry, the government isn't going anywhere. And what we saw this year, that the government is going somewhere. We had recent conversations about the FBI going to Maryland. We all know what Donald Trump and Elon Musk did to the federal workforce in DC. So we have to think bigger. You know, right now, the mayor and the council is pushing the stadium to move to RFK Stadium. That's not gonna solve our economic crisis. We need to think bigger. We need to bring other industries to DC. And I'm not just talking. I actually met a guy who was willing to so-called bring about 20 industries from New York City to DC, international development. But it's not just program managers, there's IT jobs, there's cybersecurity jobs that are qualified under STEM. But without being a council member, without having the oversight abilities, without having the budget opportunities, weren't able to make that right package, and that deal is still pending, or that opportunity is still pending. So being a council member will not only allow me to bring certain careers to DC, but make sure that they're going to be filled by DC residents. So when these young people are graduating with STEM careers, or we have DC residents that already have STEM careers, they want to make that change, that those opportunities will already be here and won't just be talking about it.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, some of the things you remind me of reminds me of some of your initiatives and ideas, and the strategy you're applying reminds me of some great scientists I've thought about. For example, R.B. Woodward, he used protecting groups. He's a well-known chemist. He used protecting groups to keep his pathway clean. In history, we know about Dr. Charles Drew, revolutionized medicine by figuring out how to stabilize the intermediate blood plasma. You have a background in healthcare advocacy. What is your tailored strategy, almost like Charles Drew, for the workforce pipeline? How do we use policy to stabilize students against side reactions such as trauma, mental health issues, procurement delays, so that they survive the journey of going from the public school to a career? How would you impact that process?
Well, policy is very important. The law is very important because it makes things easier, it makes things possible. When we're talking about developing young kids into becoming scientists, we have to have a level of intentionality that oftentimes our bills don't have. We have to pass laws that will bear fruit in 10, 15 years, not just in 10, 15 months. We can't just keep changing course because somebody else gets elected. So whether it's, putting money into new Apple books or putting money into recreation centers, they can help, but it doesn't always move the needle. When we talk about resources, most people talk about money. I believe in time. We need to spend more time with young people. We need to put more, as I said, scientists, doctors, pharmacists, engineers into these classrooms, even if it's once a month or even once a year. Because once a kid realizes that they want to be an engineer, their day-to-day decisions change. Now, when it comes to funding, I believe we need to fund more field trips. There are so many headquarters in D.C., but not a lot of young kids have access to them. There's a lot of embassies in D.C., but not everybody goes to them. So to find ways to reduce bureaucracy and just do the little easy things can really help out a lot more than just throwing money at problems, which in my opinion is what the district government is doing right now. They see a problem, they throw more money at it. 2 years later, they realize the money was wasted. I believe we need to change the foundation, put more scientists in classrooms, make it easier for scientists to get to these classrooms. I can't tell you how hard it is to become a volunteer. And then I had to create my own program, and luckily I have the energy to do so. But most pharmacists and most engineers, they're willing to do it, but they don't want to create the program. So if we can even just make a program in people's neighborhood schools, it'll make a huge difference, because not only are you giving back to your community, not only are you talking to kids that look like you, most likely, but you're also helping change our city without having to put $1 into it, without having to pay more taxes, without having to create a new initiative out of the blue, hoping that will last. These things are needed, and these things are simple. And I'm sure, David, you became a healthcare worker because you had early exposure. These kids in DC need so too.
Yeah, I do. I did have early exposure. I actually grew up in a house with a healthcare worker as well. Yeah, so I've had lots of exposure to it. So it's definitely impactful. So in chemistry, distribution follows equilibrium. You represent the ideal kinetic shift. Born to Nigerian parents in Massachusetts, but you chose to bring your talents to DC. Today, however, we face a reverse migration of talent leaving. What else will you do to make sure that we keep the Black talent in DC, as you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, that's a personal question for me. My parents left Nigeria in the 1970s. They actually met on campus in America. My mom came from a wealthy side. Her parents were able to afford her to come to get paid for her college fees. My dad had to. This is 1970s, y'all. My dad worked in the summer. He had a summer job that afforded him enough to pay for his fall and spring semester. This is 1970s. This is not 2025. I don't think it's many jobs that you can work 3 months and pay off your school fees. But they left Nigeria because there were just no opportunities. They had just left the Biafran War, and they stayed in America because they felt that if they worked hard enough, they could live with dignity, and their kids worked hard enough, they could live with dignity. And right now in DC, almost 60 years later, that's not true anymore. You can't pay for a college education by yourself. You can make the same amount of money as you made 20 years ago, and you're not getting by. And a lot of politicians are trying to find ways to make things cheaper when we're looking at a real crisis of the wages are stagnant. For the last 50 years, we have been getting paid the same while doing more work. And that's why we're being crushed. And yes, we want to make things more affordable. Yes, I have a plan on making things available for folks who are scraping by. But we also have to address bringing in higher wage careers, preparing young people for those higher wage careers, so they're not being displaced when we're looking for employees or employers or entrepreneurs. So getting kids into technical careers, getting kids into specialized licensed professions like our own in pharmacy that have fewer wage gaps, whether it's race or gender compared to other spheres, is a huge game changer for our nation's capital. We can rebuild DC while building our neighborhoods, while building our neighbors at the same time. And that's the way to end displacement and not have a brain drain. You know, if it comes to a point where all the jobs are in New York or San Francisco, then people are going to leave. Our young folks are going to leave.
Yep.
I do a lot of advocacy in West Virginia. They have a population crisis because young people are graduating from University of West Virginia and leaving because there's no jobs. And when you see the federal job cut here, when you see the Doge situation happening, when you're seeing certain mom and pop closing down because business rent are so freaking high, you're gonna get that brain drain. And what we're trying to do is bring those careers, but also bring the right careers that can hire people of today and the DC of tomorrow.
Yep. So another thing, R.B. Woodward didn't just tell a story, he proved it with mechanistic evidence. As a scientist and a pharmacist, you are trained to look at data, not just vibes.
Yes.
What are ways, or how will you bring pharmacy precision to the council to ensure that we follow evidence rather than the brew of public opinion?
Oh my goodness, that is such a good question, because the scientific method teaches us to make a hypothesis, but test it out and build your conclusion. Right now in politics, they look at polling, pass laws, and change the laws 3 months later. It doesn't make sense. I mean, our budget went from $14 billion less than 10 years ago to $21 billion now, and quality of life has not gone up 50% like the budget has. And what we're going to do is use evidence and stay consistent with evidence to make sure we move things forward. But we're also going to think bigger. You know, as a pharmacist, you know, we give out medications per diagnosis, whether it's hypertension, whether it's diabetes, whether it's mental health. But we also know you have to treat the entire body, because one pill creates a side effect. If you try to treat the side effect with another medication, another medication, now someone has 12 pieces of medication and you're not really going after the big picture. Same thing happens to those, there's not a lot of communication. So what I would do is take the dollars and think more holistically. What I'm saying is we need to find ways to build the community foundation, so regardless of how many police officers we are safer communities. That's why I'm pushing getting kids into college, not pushing them into prison. Every single year someone's in university, reduce their risk of committing a violent offense by 10%. Even if they don't graduate. 1 year, 10% less. 2 years, 20% less. 3 years, so on, you get the drift. So this is not just public safety dollars. This is not just economic dollars. This is also public health. Because as people continue to move on in university, they're able to develop skills to give them a better quality of life. And it keeps our community safe. So think holistically, bringing that scientific method, but also not leading and ending with your beliefs, going with the evidence and really building a true platform for DC to be better.
Yeah, you make a very valid point. So my question to you is, a lot of people are now pushing this narrative that college is not worth it. What's your take on that?
Yeah. So my concern with that reasoning is when people usually say college is not for everyone, they're usually talking about kids that look like me and you, right? You're not finding white kids in Potomac, Maryland being told college is not for everybody. So I do believe that people should be going to college, especially in today's economy. But there are instances where somebody can't afford it or it's not in the cards. So I have a lot of great relationships with unions. We worked on exposure clinics. We help returning citizens get their lives back on track. And I do believe unions would be a great opportunity to help fill in the void of getting people into apprenticeships, getting people into careers that can pay them a livable wage and build from there. People talk about trade schools all the time. The only issue with trade schools is if you're not giving somebody money while they learn, it's hard for them to keep committed. You know, when we're young, when we have parents pushing us to go to school, we go to school. Once we get the 20s, 30s, or 40s, it's hard to learn for free. And a lot of unions provide apprenticeships that pay people and keep them afloat while they learn and gain skills that can give them a better second chance or re-entry back into the workforce. So I believe in really empowering unions, trade organizations, folks that not only teach folks, but compensate them and keep them afloat while they're learning.
Yes, I completely agree with you. So, Ernest Everett Just, a giant of Howard University, proved that the cell's environment dictates its development. As a healthcare provider, you know that you can't treat a patient if their environment makes them sick. In housing and public safety, we often blame the individual, or sometimes people blame the individual. What was your strategy to fix the housing, stability, lighting, green spaces, and to prevent other issues within the D.C. community?
Yeah, environmental justice is really important to me. I think one of the biggest issues that's not being talked about right now is that D.C. is scaling back their environmental protections. Whether it's the stadium renewal with Capital One Arena for the Wizards and the Capitals, or the new RFK Stadium that's going to be rebuilt for the Commanders as they come back to D.C. We're not enforcing environmental protections. We're talking about billion-dollar deals that can be the biggest polluters in our community, not having environmental requirements, even as they build, let alone renew. I'm also concerned about a project that's going on in Anacostia Park, where they're trying to put a luxury spa in one of the biggest green spaces we have. And you see the erosion of our green space. It's a huge issue for me. I believe that all new housing needs to have environmental requirements, and we should also be able to enforce them. Right now, we may have recommendations, but without enforcement, it's just words on a paper. So I've been working with environmental groups, I've been working with tenant associations to ensure that we not only have a more watchful eye on environmental protections, but we also have the enforcement. Because as you know, if a public housing has mold in it, then the kids have respiratory ailments. If someone lives right next to a big metro station, they have higher instances of asthma, and the quality of life decreases. Where I live in Ward 8, we have a life expectancy of 15 years less than those who live in Georgetown, and that's not fair. And a lot of it has to do with environmental protections and justice.
Oh wow, yeah, I hear you, man, I hear you. So, in synthesis, you monitor progress step by step. In your grassroots work, you focus heavily on civic education. Today, the legislative process is not as transparent as it could be. What things do you plan to do to ensure that people can track bills and budgets in real time?
Well, as the D.C. Shadow Representative, former ANC Commissioner, a Ward 8 pharmacist who not only works in Ward 8, but lives in Ward 8, I've learned I lived in the most diverse community in D.C. Not just on race, but really how people consume information. Right now we have mayor's office and council member's office. They typically put out newsletters, and it's kind of like show up where we're at sometimes. We like to bring information to the streets. We like to knock on doors. We like to be in a grocery store talking to people. But it's not just how many people you talk to and counting the amount of folks you reach out to, but it's also how much of your work counts to people. So when we were able to do expunge claims, we were able to not only provide service to returning citizens, but we're also giving people who are just impacted probably the first time one-to-one conversation with an elected official, letting folks know that we care about you. Going to senior homes, talking to them about their medication. Yes, I'm an elected official, but I care about what's going on. And when you reach out to people on things that they care about, they're likely going to be more engaged with what you care about. And when you bring information to people at language that they understand, then it's easier for them to comprehend it. If you go to my neighborhood, you start talking to people about $7 billion in a budget, they're just going to give you a blank stare. I will give you a blank stare. I could probably think of up to $500. I could $500, I can't even comprehend it anymore. So really getting people the information that they need at digestible bits, but also listening to them what they care about, carries the message a lot further than what's happening right now. So reaching out to more folks, but also reaching more into folks in their issues really has helped me build a strong coalition, and I'm going to continue to do that once in office.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, that's very important, being able to reach out and reach in and make sure you are effectively impacting people. So, what is your office, or what is your idea or your take on making sure that we use shared incentives to ensure durable bond formation between the Northwest and the Southeast? You don't just get coupling by wishing the fragments would like each other. So, so what's your take on that?
Well, the important thing for everyone to know, especially in the Northwest and the wealthiest areas, and I think they understand this within the last 5 years, if you ignore issues going on in another part of the city, eventually it reach you. Just like if somebody has gangrene in their foot and they just want to let it go, it will move up your leg and impact your life. So that shared responsibility of a safe and healthy community is universal. And like I said, people understand that now. Like when one grocery store closes down because of shoplifting, guess what? The one closest to you is gonna likely start having shoplifting issues if people don't know where to get their stuff from. So that's that. And that connectivity is something that I've appreciated. You know, I live in Ward 8, but I'm a citywide elected right now as a representative, and we've seen it throughout the year. Whether it's the Latino community being targeted by ICE during Trump's federal takeover, you saw a lot of non-Latinos, a lot of white people out in these streets, filming, protesting, marching, even at a time where a lot of my fellow elected officials were too afraid to get out of the house. This is important because we're all connected together. So this year was really tough, but it really brought us all together because we had that shared dismay of the federal intervention into our local quality of life. And when it comes to legislation or when it comes to this budget, we have to think the same way. We're in this together.
I agree. We're all in this together, and that's something I want to bridge to that. You know, this concept of togetherness. Yeah. You know, we've seen funds for Black communities and DEI initiatives kind of vanish out of thin air, or just vanish because of interventions that government has introduced. What's your take on that? You know, my view is, like many people have said, when everyone can play, the game gets better. When everyone can have a seat at the table, the conversation is richer. So, absolutely. What's your take on the almost, I wouldn't say removal, but diminishing of DEI funding to support initiatives for Black and Brown communities? What's your take on that?
Yeah, we've seen a huge major walk back on inclusion. And when people talk about DEI, let's be frank, they're talking about Black, right? It's the new N-word, right? And we're seeing business after business or corporations never really cared about us walking back at the first inch they can do so. And I'm really proud to join a lot of coalitions that pretty much boycotted and protested against it. D.C., led by my friend Dante, Pastor Fears, and Reverend Hagler, every Saturday have gone outside the Columbia Heights Target to launch a boycott. For an hour from 11 to 12 noon, they do it without end. And they're building and building and building their coalition. I was the first, probably one of 2 elected officials in D.C. that have joined them and supported this. But what I also want is not just the boycotting, but the shifting to pro-DEI, pro-Black businesses. Because it's not enough to just say Target is bad or Amazon is bad. We had to find a good alternative. And I had this conversation with Senator Nina Turner, one of the coalition builders nationwide of the Target, the Boycott Target Initiative. It's like we have to also point out the good people. We got to point out the Costco's that didn't scale back from their workers. We got to praise the local Black and Brown businesses that continue to make it happen despite what's going on. And we got to make sure that people who work for these businesses that we are going after, like the Targets and the Amazons, don't feel like we're attacking them. We're going after corporate interests that disinvest in their own employees' communities. So I believe that not only do we have to call out the bad actors, but we have to rebuild our own economy so we're not reliant on the White House. You know, being reliant on the White House set us up for this type of action when Trump was elected. When we build our own foundation and put our own money and resources together, we can make that change. Target lost about, 10% of their shares? The CEO was fired. I mean, he put onto the board, but he was fired because of this issue. Now, instead of just tearing down a business, let's rebuild some more. And I'm really glad to see that approach also taken on as well.
Yeah, and you know, color or race has even though some people may say it's a social construction or a social idea, it has economic realities, it has historic realities, it has a lot of impact on how someone shows up in the workspace, and also the richness of their perspective because they've lived in different circumstances. So I think what you're saying is very important. You know, when we think about some of the people of color, many of them have pioneered a lot of firsts in history, like first in a lot of areas of science, whether it be medicine or technology. A lot of people of color have pioneered first, so we miss out when we decide to limit the table, the bargaining table, the C-suite, just people who look like us. Some people say that they don't see color, but you know, sometimes that's because everyone around them is the same. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, man. But yeah, Oye, this is very good. I'm so glad you're able to join me today. So what has been some of the most beneficial advice you have received?
Yeah, the most beneficial advice was actually read out of a book by Steve Harvey. It wasn't Think Like a Man, so don't think of that. It was a book called Jump. And the idea of the book was taking that leap. Even if you're afraid, even if it's not the right time, take that jump, because that perfect time we're gonna have enough money, the perfect time when you have the right family is never gonna happen. Take that jump. My very first foray into politics, I went to a neighborhood meeting. I didn't enjoy it. It was dysfunctional, it was crazy, it was unorganized, and the commissioners were pretty rude to the audience. And I did what I did best. Went to the back of the room and talked about all the commissioners until somebody told me, if you're so much better, why don't you run? Had I not taken the jump, I wouldn't be here. And a lot of people are afraid of failing. They're worried about what they look like, and they never take that jump. And there's two types of people. There's not winners and losers, but people who take that jump and people who don't. So seeing you with your platform, seeing you the work that you've done is based off of you being able to take that jump. You know, you probably started with one watcher for 3 months, and that one watcher was probably you. But you've grown what you have because of the work you put into it. And if you were thinking, hey, I'm going to only launch where I have 50,000 followers, you know, that jump may not happen. You know, Rome wasn't built in one day. Right? When I volunteer, I tell young women who are often told that science is the boys thing to just go for it. And it makes a huge difference because, as you know, Rome wasn't built in one day. But when you see all those things we were talking about throughout this podcast episode about being the first, it's because we took that jump. And we made Black history. A White House never made Black history. A White House never made Black History Month. A White House never created diversity, equity, inclusion, equality. We fought for that. Generations of Americans, foundationally Black Americans, fought and died for that. And we have to fight and put in the work for them as well, because at the end of the day, we stand on the shoulders of those who took that jump.
Having diverse genders in the field of science. So it's good. So thank you, Oye. Thank you, Oye, so much. I appreciate this highly. Any last words? What if you had to give advice to someone, what would be your advice to them if they see the work that you're doing in pharmacy and in public service? What would your advice to them be?
My advice, similar to what I just said, but I'll expound on it. Get involved, right? If you like something, if something is easy for you, just get involved. Volunteering is very, very precious. It takes a lot of privilege to be able to volunteer. I know folks have economic realities, but just getting yourself involved gets you noticed. If somebody is always watching, you know, if you're someone that wants to run for office, get involved in your political party, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. Whether you want to create an adventure, you want to be your own boss one day, volunteer at an organization, be involved, because the right people will come in your way when you get involved. Last but not least, stay involved and get connected with the Blueprint. You know, David has a lot of great people joining his platform each and every episode. Listen to these people and follow up with these people. You may not have Kevin Hart's phone number. You can probably find an email to his website that may get to him one day. So don't be afraid of taking that jump. Don't be afraid of reaching for the stars, because you will get pretty far. Last but not least, if you want to get plugged in with me, you can go to vote4oye.com. Again, vote4oye.com. This is going to be a wide open race, a crazy year in D.C., but we're not just trying to run to win a seat. We're running to really change the values of D.C., the governance of D.C., and bring that scientific method, bringing that diaspora background, bringing that outside but inside perspective is really what our city needs right now.
Yep. So thank you again, Oye, for joining me. It was a treat to have you on today.
Purpose of these episodes not at all for advice or medical suggestions. These are aimed to provide support to peer pharmacists in training in educational and intellectually stimulating ways. Again, these are not at all for medical advice or medical suggestions. Please see your local board and state-certified health professional. The views of this podcast represent those of my guests and I.
Guest list heavy, big names abound. Academic and professional leaders, knowledge profound. Gary May, Robert Langer, Golden Sound. Podcast lit, wisdom's playground. Conversations rich, interviews bright. From MDs to artists, sharing insight. Chemistry vibe, conversations ignite. Steam dreams growing, future so bright. Chancellor May, Sidney Colley in the fold. MK Brown, Sheena Colley, stories told. Mike Zott, Robert Langer, wisdom gold. McCall Washington, young minds bold. Dr. Thomas N.G., Todd Golub, ignite. Abinaya Marcella, vision bright. Lesel Vincent, Sonola's insight. Michael Evans, cough under spotlight. Sarah Scrabalak, Nigella speak clear. Jake Desmond's vision future near. Mr. Bourne Kuna, Fortingo here. Darissa Ferguson, voices sincere. Guest list heavy, big names abound. Academic and professional leaders, knowledge profound. Gary May, Robert Langer, Golden Sound. Podcast lit, wisdom's playground. Conversations rich, interviews bright. From MDs to artists, sharing insight. Chemistry vibe, conversations ignite. Steam dreams growing, future so bright. LC Campo, Emery Brown's precision. Lynn Rashay Johnson brings thoughtful vision. Keshav Gavin transclinical mission. Dick Mann and Johansson research ambition. Louis Junghan, Trevor Johnson's art. And Pinder speaking from the heart. David Joshua Ferguson plays his part. Chadwin Hanna, Vincent Miranda start. Greg Zuckerman writing from the Wall Street beat. Cordell Hardy's wisdom research elite. Kyle Woom, Forbes list ambition complete. Gabriel Galarza's insights repeat. Guest list heavy, big names abound. Academic and professional leaders, knowledge profound. Gary May, Robert Langer, Golden Sound. Podcast lit, wisdom's playground. Conversations rich, interviews bright. From MDs to artists, sharing insight. Chemistry vibe, conversations ignite. Steam dreams growing, future so bright. Dev Mandavia, corporate strategy bold. Jenai Burrows, medical stories unfold. Doreen Duncan's vision, island city mold. Paul Boyer's lectures, stories retold. Omar Sharif Ali, software meta. Economic talks, making minds better. Pranav Dorbala, med school go-getter. Ging Rahim Bia, engineering trendsetter. Savni Kulkarni, Abbott structural heart. PharmD candidate giving advice to start. Podcast guest list, masterful art. New chemist podcast playing art part. Guest list heavy, names renowned. Knowledge deepest in vibes profound. Podcast flowing, innovation sound. Future so bright, keep dreams unbound.